Good afternoon. My name is Maria Estrada. I'm a state assembly candidate for the 63rd District. I am the director of LULAC of Los Angeles, the League of United Latino American Citizens. And LULAC is the oldest Latino civil rights organization in the country. I'm an activist, and I am engaged in the Democratic Party politics and processes simply because the Democratic Party controls the state of California, controls my community, and are the ultimate, power source in this state. Yesterday, I organized a protest at a endorsement meeting for politicians within the state of California, within my region. The regional director of the 16th region is Sergio Carrillo, who just so happens to be the vice chair of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. The purpose of my protest was because in January, the state of California Democratic Party had statewide elections within the party to elect at local seats within their districts 7 women and 7 men from each district. So myself and other activists ran in our on a slate in our district, and the counter slate that was put together consisted primarily of local elected officials, including mayor of Hawaiian Gardens, a mayor of the city of Linwood, vice mayor of Cudahy, several city council members, school board members that were chosen by the Speaker of the Assembly, Anthony Rendon. The Speaker, with the help of these elected officials, brought in voters in 5 leisure charter buses to come in and vote in this election. During the election, it was found that my name was left off the ballot, and it was very contentious, to say the least, because I had previously ran against the Speaker, and I was basically a nobody that came out to run against arguably the most powerful man in this state. And I received 46% of the vote, spending $18,000 to the speaker's war chest, and he spent apparently in the general over $1 million. So no one in the country received or doubled the amount of votes from a comparable election as we did in the 63rd. And it was just a handful of us activists, a teacher, a nurse, a union worker, a gardener that worked at a school, just a handful of us out there, knocking on doors and, in the community, engaging with the community, informing them of what was happening. So yesterday at this, meeting, we came in armed with poster boards and a bullhorn, and we confronted the regional director, Sergio Correa, who, like I said, is the vice chair of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party, which is the largest organization within the party in the state, and I believe in the country. I was immediately attacked by Rochelle Schneider, who's in the 66th district. She's a very tall woman. She came at me, and Assemblyman Al Marasucci had to pull her off me. I then went around to get away from her as I went forward to confront the regional director. And to be clear, one of the reasons I was there was because during our election, 22 people registered at that local election. The gentleman, Carrillo, actually held them up and said, we have 22 newly registered voters, which is actually a lot for our location. And I subsequently found out from the registrar's office that not only did he not turn in those 22 voter registration forms, he didn't turn in any of the voter registration forms in any of the 4 districts he represents, which is a crime. And so the Democratic Party is not only engaging in election fraud and intimidation tactics, but they're actually committing the crime of people right now in my district believe that they're registered to vote and they're not. So I had to, after my ADEM election, go to Sacramento, manually put in with a friend all the names of the 542 voters, of which I did an audit with my voter registration list from November of 2018, and I found that 199 of those people were not eligible to vote. Not only were they not Democrats, several were not registered to vote, but they brought in people from outside the district, and they included Republicans to vote within this election. And this is a Democratic Party only election, and they knowingly did this. So I challenged the ruling, the results, because we were completely, defeated across the board, and they denied my ruling, acknowledging that 105 were not registered, 5 were out of the district, and 54, which I'm not sure what that meant, they couldn't prove they weren't registered, so they're going to give them the benefit of the doubt and count their votes. I provided the 199 names. They ignored that. I appealed it. I went to the hearing in Sacramento at the convention that was just held in San Francisco, where all the presidential candidates were. And I went and spoke, and the amount of, bylaw violations, for the party's violations, bylaws, that were violated by Sergio Carrillo, by the speaker, and by the elected officials that engaged in this election fraud, were presented. I had the proof. It was just blatantly obvious that the entire election was just a fraud, and it was acknowledged that the fraud occurred. However, they still ruled against me. So that was part of the purpose of me going to that, because they're going to, what's going to happen is the Democratic Party is going to endorse someone like the speaker who engages in election fraud and bullying tactics, and allows these elected officials in our local government, in my community, who actually have more control over our local communities than the speaker himself. So when you have city council members who allow companies like Berkshire Hathaway or Exide to conduct business and contaminate communities with lead, with arsenic, with Xevelin chromium-6 for years and years and years, and people in the community are sick and getting cancer, have breathing issues, respiratory issues, and nothing is being done to relieve that. And then the same people in power are ensuring that those same elected officials stay in power. It does not allow for us as the people from that community to have representation and to be protected by the very people and organizations that are there to protect us. Now, if you look at Exide, that was allowed to conduct business for over 33 years in the city of Vernon, that contaminated not only Southeast LA, but East LA, Boyle Heights, all over that area. Right now, over 10,000 homes have been tested. 97% of those homes have lead in them. Now, there is no safe levels of lead. So all of the baby teeth that USC is doing a study on currently, 100% have lead in them. That's going to cause behavioral issues, low IQs, and the teachers in those communities are going to be expected to teach those kids at regular levels. So now you have the Speaker of the Assembly, who we all know last year, or in 2017, blocked SB 562, which would have provided health care for everyone in the state and saved the state $37 billion. So he knowingly ran in a community that has some of the worst environmental conditions in the state, has the highest amount of uninsured children in the county of Los Angeles, the second highest amount of uninsured adults in the county of Los Angeles, denying them health care. The fact is that the Democratic Party is a capitalist party. The Democratic Party does not represent me, does not represent my community, my people. The Democratic Party represents the corporations that enriches their coffers and supports their campaigns. Every elected official for the last 20 years has known what's been happening in Southeast LA, and they've remained silent on it. You have Cristina Garcia, Miguel Santiago, and Anthony Rendon that wrote a bill in 2015 that alleviated Exide of the responsibility of the cleanup, which at the time would have been $500 million. During the Porter Ranch disaster, Governor Brown came to Porter Ranch to, talk about it, and was on the news, and he never came to Southeast LA. He ultimately came only because he was humiliated and embarrassed and forced to come because, as we know, Porter Ranch is a very white, affluent neighborhood, and Southeast LA is 76% Mexicanos, and it's a very poor community. And as we know, our communities don't get the attention that they deserve from our elected officials. So when he finally came, it was decided that a bill would be written that would tax the Californian people, $176 million to pay for the cleanup, which was clearly short of what was needed for the cleanup. And to this day, I think maybe 724 homes have been cleaned, and they're not even being properly cleaned. The parkways are not being cleaned. The roofs are not being cleaned. What's going to happen is the lead's going to go from the roof to the attic and back in the home. All they're doing is cleaning the yards, and if a dog goes on the parkway or your neighbor's house and then goes on your yard, you've got lead back on your property. So there is nothing being done to properly address this. And during this time, you had the Cal OSHA that was inside of Exide that knew that every employee in there was being contaminated and exposed to lead. But you had the Department of Toxic Substances Control knew about it, the EPA knew about it, the AQMD knew about it, the Department of Public Health knew about it. Every agency in this state that was there, that should be there to protect us, did nothing to protect us and allow this company to function. So somebody was getting paid to allow this company to function and make profits from this. So when all of this went down, Exide filed Chapter 11 reorganization. And at that time, Exide, they gave their creditors, as part of the payments, stock, which was worth $29 a share. If you go back to September of 2018, their stock was worth $292 per share. So their stock went way up. Their sales were up 23% from 2017. They were opening a new facility in Kansas City, Missouri, and at the time their assets were at $1.9 billion. So why are the people of California having to pay taxes to clean up a catastrophe that a very profitable company is able to pay? Why are the people being subjected to that kind of tax when we know we have some of the highest poverty rates in the country? We have homeless people. I mean, this is it's outrageous. And at no point in time are any of the elected officials in the state of California fighting for the people of the state of California. I did not run because I wanted to run or because I ever imagined that I would run for office. My race and my candidacy is out of necessity. It's necessary that my people have a voice. It's necessary that people of the state of California have representation. And it is I feel it's my responsibility, being that I am from Southeast LA, my mother's still in Southeast LA, my godmother's in Southeast LA, friends from high school still live by my high school. So I'm from the area. I moved away and raised my kids outside of the area because it was dangerous. Growing up, I always had a gun in my car. It was just a lot of violence, shootings, a lot of selling of drugs. It was just very violent at the time. I moved away. I came back to my community to represent my people, to fight for my community. And that's why I decided to run against the speaker. The speaker has the power to swing a bill in any direction he likes. He has that power. It is, to me, criminal for someone like him to have the kind of power he does and to fail the people of Southeast LA and the state of California. And that is why it is imperative that he be challenged. Like I had mentioned, my race was just a handful, a motley crew of people that are pissed off, just like I am. And in the primary, we had no idea what we were doing. I've never run in a race before. And we raised approximately $7,000. I put in, $3,000 of my own, and we had the highest increase of voters in the state of California in the 63rd. So when the state was down 12% in voting, the 63rd was up 42%. After after the primary, I was viciously attacked. I had Jake Tapper at CNN tweeting about me. I had Newsweek did an article attacking me, claiming I was an anti-Semite. The Anti-Defamation League made a public statement about me, and the Museum of Tolerance actually had a display saying that stating I was an anti-Semite. So the level and the power that AIPAC has over our legislator is unacceptable. And a lot of these elected officials are very tied to AIPAC, and I'm very I was kind of concerned only because I have family members that are Jewish, and one of the volunteers on my campaign who heard about my race and reached out to me. Not only is she Jewish and of Holocaust, but she's related to Anne Frank. So she wrote a letter on my behalf. 36 members of the Jewish community came and spoke out on my behalf, and 6 of them were of Holocaust. So I was very touched by that. I feel that all people in my community deserve representation. My fight is for my people, and when I say my people, it's not just the Mexican people. It's for the Jewish community, the Muslim community, the Black community, everyone who's been disenfranchised by this government, by what's happening. And I would ask everyone to donate to my friend Anthony, who's been arrested for defending me yesterday from a man who attacked me, and they've charged him with a felony, and he didn't do anything wrong. All he did was push the man off me. I'm sorry for getting upset. But Anthony's a good man. He's got a heart of gold. And I actually was about to hit the man in the head with my bullhorn when Anthony came and pushed him off me because he was grabbing me by my neck. So anyway,
Where should we donate to?
I have a GoFundMe on my wall. I'm sorry.
Okay. It's okay.
Okay, I'll take questions. Okay.
Get that posted. Okay, we're gonna turn it over to
Sorry.
questions. Actually, real quick, before we do questions, I'd like to hear from Matt and Felix about what we were talking about for the undocumented community. Please direct it to Maria, and then we'll ask Maria for her opinion, and then we'll direct it to you.
So,
Well, as far as the question of what more can be done, within the under the U.S. rule, not much, as was pointed out previously. You know, they can overrule us, whereas an independent California can offer asylum to all refugees and citizenship to all residents. But we're not the only ones that can do that. Let us not forget that we're talking today on Tonga land, and I come from the territory of the Yubiaton. Every sovereign nation has the same right, okay, to offer asylum to refugees. Mm-hmm. So there are things that, acting in concert with us, or even independently, in their sovereign right to offer asylum. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you're running for assembly. Mm-hmm. You may know from district that represents, there's a district near San Bernardino. The person who just won that seat is himself Yubiaton, James Ramos. Mm-hmm. And before that, he was a county supervisor. That county supervisorial district and that state assembly district very closely match Yubiaton territory. Mm-hmm. So we have placed our trust in a person who was a long-standing chairman at the San Manuel Reservation and who voluntarily resigned that to represent for all of us. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Matt, direct your question to
what is this? The initiative about?
The initiative is
for undocumented people to become full citizens.
Yes, exactly. That the independent California Republic can do that. Okay, we can't do that. We can't offer them United States citizenship. That's out of our bailiwick. But we can offer them California citizenship. As a matter of fact, upon our independence, we're all dual citizens to start out with, at least.
So we,
okay.
right.
Because just real quick, we were talking about filing an initiative where it took the DMV law and it said everybody who's undocumented can get a DMV driver's license.
That was Nativo Lopez that actually pushed that bill.
Yeah,
Nativo
that's
just
right.
passed away.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
recently,
Yeah.
we we announced that we're currently in redrafting an already approved assembly bill, correct? That is, we're basing our draft on this DMV bill. We already have legal precedent where California officials, state officials, arrest federal agents. See, that's that's already legal precedent. Where California cops come in, or officials come in and say, "Hey, you're a federal official. You're violating California law." They arrest them, right, and put them in the can. So what we're proposing is that to draft this bill that would allow undocumented and all Californians a sort of quasi-citizenship within the state of California, allowing for the state of California to fully protect and endorse these people who are essentially the backbone of our economy, right? There is no doubt that the California state economy relies heavily on these undocumented people, and even though they are undocumented, that is no true crime in and of itself. We can go read the federal law. It's not true. It's not a true crime to be an undocumented person within the United States.
Correct.
And so that's our argument. That's our argument right there. Would you or would you not be willing to endorse a bill like that would guarantee rights for all people within California?
Well, actually, we were just discussing. I'm currently having a bill written right now in regards to law enforcement that would make it against the law for California taxpayer money, to pay for any settlements for police negligence, police crimes, murders. If someone was incarcerated and later found to be innocent after spending, 5, 10, 20, 30 years. You hear that all the time. People are released and they're given settlements, and a lot of times it's because the police lied, planted evidence. You could go on and on. The California taxpayer should not be burdened with that. In 2017, the city of Los Angeles took out a loan for $100 million to pay off $200 million in settlements they owed. We're not only being beaten, brutalized, and killed by the police, we're paying for them to do this to us. So I'm writing a bill actually to make that against the law. I was also asked, similar to what you're stating, is to allow non-citizens to vote in local elections, because the fact is, if you go to a city like Maywood, 52% of them people are not born in the United States. They're not to say they're not citizens, but they're not born in the United States, or that they're not able to vote. The fact is that a lot of what's happening, that the Democratic Party is able to control these communities, is because they actually don't want new voters to come in. They actually want the same small percentage of people to vote. And when you do have people who get politically engaged, like I said, my race was unheard of, but you had local seats where a gentleman that ran for city council owned a restaurant and they broke the windows out of his restaurant. They will slash your tires, they will key your cars, they will get the parking enforcement to bully and harass you. That's very common. But if the people in the community who are undocumented had a voice and were able to vote in local elections, maybe not state or federal elections, but in local elections for city seats, because they do have children in the schools, because of what's happening in the community does affect them, I'm absolutely for that. And I do believe And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that sovereign law is above state law. So it's federal law, sovereign law, and state law. So any tribe could assert their sovereignty and supersede any of the laws, the immigration laws. So they could actually allow undocumented people to go on their land, and they can do nothing about it. That's actually, a lot of people don't realize that.
Yes, that's exactly. That's exactly.
I'm-
sovereign right.
I'm actually on the board of the Native Women's Unity Association that is out of Pine Ridge, South Dakota, and I met the people that organize that organization in Philadelphia at the presidential convention, and they asked me to be on the board. basically because I have a big mouth, and that they feel that I could empower a lot of the women in the community. The husband is actually the liaison between the president and the tribal leaders. So he's, they, not that they want to, but they could speak to, Trump, have access to Trump, and they're very connected to people in Congress. But I've learned a lot about sovereign law. And as soon as I decided I was going to run, that was going to be one of the first things that has to happen. Is the state of California has to acknowledge the sovereignty of all First Nations people in the state. But I would support that bill. My parents were immigrants, and the fact is that we built this country with our blood, our sweat, and our tears, and our lives.
That's right.
And as did the African American community. And just like what's happening, here, it's happened all over Central America. They're trying to do it now in Venezuela. The United States and capitalists are exploiting the resources and the labor of indigenous people, and they're profiting from the exploitation of us. We call them immigrants. A lot of these people are just indigenous people coming. We've migrated for a millennia. It's going to continue to happen. The recent migrations are because of the coup that happened in Honduras 10 years ago under Obama and Hillary Clinton. These failed foreign neoliberal policies have wreaked havoc all over Central America, Latino America, and it's got to stop. So as far as I'm concerned, the United States owes these people asylum. If the federal government and the state of California could pay $775 per day per person, $23,250 a month per person, to put them in these shithole fucking concentration camps, they could afford to give them resources. It's a scam. It's people making a profit of the misfortunes and of other people. And the cause of this is the United States government. So the United States government has a responsibility to these people, and not to put them in these camps, and not to treat them like they're, the fact is, I'm organizing, or have organized. Mateo here has been to several of them. You have been, Marcus, and several of you have been to these demonstrations in front of Thomas Patrick Giles, who's the director of ICE of all of Los Angeles. And I've had several.
Get him out of here.
And the fact is that crimes against humanity are being committed against people who have done nothing wrong. People are dying in these camps, as you mentioned, Marcus, and being mistreated, sexually abused. Children are being sexually abused. Children are being kidnapped, taken from their families, and adopted to white families. That has happened since first contact. The white people have done that since the beginning of time. They take our children, give them to other people for no good reason. It is against a crime against international law to do that, and it is genocide. Assimilation is genocide. So the fact is that the United States government, this is common policy for this country. This has always happened. It continues to happen, and people shouldn't be shocked. Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party voted $4.6 billion to give to Donald Trump, gifted him that money for the Border Patrol, who we know is committing crimes and abusing their authority against innocent people.
They're ignoring their own law.
They absolutely are ignoring law. Exactly. Exactly. I mean, as Marcus said, there is no resistance. It's called the assistance.
That's right.
The Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is a capitalist party, just like the Republican Party.
Yeah.
The only difference is, you got like, gay rights, you have abortion. The Democratic Party becomes outraged when there's a mass shooting, and yet when the police are brutalizing and murdering us, black and brown people, they're silent because they support the police. Because the police are going to support their capitalist policies. And that is why the police, when we did the last demonstration, every demonstration in front of Thomas Giles' home, that the police are there in full force to watch a peaceful protest, which we have the right to do. A lot of, some of the people at Mateo was there, a woman, we were playing the ProPublica recordings of the children crying for their parents. You heard that, everyone heard that. It's heart-wrenching. it's all I could stand to hear it, you know. And she was laughing. She thought it was funny. She said that immigrants deserve to be in cages, and she said it in front of her husband and her children. And you know, again, we came again, and we're walking, and she's in her window over her garage with her children, and she's flipping us off, and she's telling us to go back to our country to speak English. That we have Obama phones, and how do we afford our iPads? And she did that in front of her children. So apparently, the commander of the Long Beach PD was calling people looking for me. I never try to hide who I am. I said clearly my name to the police officers that were there. But I think it was just an intimidation tactic where he reached out. People, you know, activists from all over, including Black Lives Matter in Long Beach, reached out to me to warn me about what was happening. And when I spoke to him, he was, you know, stating that we trespassed, that we impeded traffic, that we wouldn't let people walk the sidewalk, all which was false. He then said that Shankar and I, you know, were using foul language on a bullhorn. And I said, yeah, is that not my First Amendment right to do that? Or do you not know the Constitution? And he says, well, do you think it's okay that you're saying that in front of children? I said, well, when I'm calling a fascist, and I call him a fucking fascist, I do think that's okay. What I don't think is okay is when you have a white woman in front of her children laughing at other children who are caged crying for their families. And I don't think it's okay that she's telling these children, you know, calling us, telling us to go back to our country and to speak English, and saying that it's okay for these children and immigrants to be put in cages. And she thought it was funny, and she said it in front of her children. So what do you think is worse? Me calling a fucking fascist, or this woman saying those things in front of her child? That is far more harmful to that child. I go, but the reality is this woman and a lot of people think that we are subhuman, that we're inferior. So the fact that we're in cages is acceptable to them. I go, I recognize that. It's always been that way. And it is the reason why you're sitting there protecting a white fascist over us, the people from the community who are wanting him out of our community. And in history, this will be written about, and you're going to have to decide on what side of this you're on, because you're either going to be on the side of these fucking fascists or you're going to be on the right side of history.
We have a little bit of time for some quick questions and quick responses.
All right.
You can go first. Quick question, quick response.
Make it real
We'll go
quick.
to the audience.
So, would you or would you not support a law that guarantees the rights to all undocumented people in California?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
Do you support a Medicare for all?
Do you support Medicare for all?
I absolutely do. Single payer. The health insurance industry is the death panels that Sarah Palin was talking about.
Yeah.
The health insurance companies are death panels. They're unnecessary. Right now, the 80-20 clause in the ACA Obamacare bill, all that did was where they were making their 30% profit, it capped it at 20%, but there was no language in the thing that explained how that would happen. So all that happened was they raised the costs of everything. The premiums went up because they're going to make up that 10% one way or the other. So whether they're getting it
Right.
at a 30% from the full 100%, or they just increase it so high so that they make up that difference. And that's why everything's so expensive right now. If you eliminate the healthcare industry right now, you think about every city, every county, this state, every teacher, taxpayers, we pay for their healthcare. We do.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
So if you eliminate that money could go to salaries, to benefits, to the communities that all of these government employees work for. It would be a huge uplift for everyone. There makes no logical sense for the speaker to have pulled that bill. And the fact is, he literally stopped the legislative process. Now, if he doesn't have the fortitude to push that bill and work on that bill to get the funding mechanisms that were already provided, and he specifically stated, keep them separate, we'll take care of it in legislation. And he took it so it wouldn't move forward in the committee so that the funding mechanisms could be put in. We could have already been implementing this right now. And this healthcare would cover medical, dental, vision, and drug rehabilitation, which is necessary, and mental health. How many people do you know on the street that are on the street because they have mental health issues and they need being mentally ill is not a crime. 30% of the people in jails are mentally ill.
That's right.
That is not the help they need. So we're wasting money, incarcerating people that really shouldn't be in jail. The system is set up to make us fail. The system is set up to brutalize us. It is not okay to treat people like that. And yet in a capitalist system, that's totally acceptable. And the Democratic Party pushes those policies. And I'm saying this specifically to the Democratic Party because they're the ones that control my community, this county, and this state. And that's the reality of it. The Republicans are the same. They're both capitalists. They both don't give a shit if your grandmother dies or if you need health care and you need to go to the doctor or whatever. They want you to pull up from your bootstraps when they're ripping the bootstraps out from under you. I mean, it's ridiculous.
One last question from Matt.
Would you support bills in which California would incorporate the International Covenant of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights that covers things like healthcare, housing, education, and so on, as part of our fundamental Charter of Rights in California? And would you support a bill in which California accedes to the Rome Statute, recognizing the International Criminal Court, which the U.S. does not, so that we can claim universal jurisdiction, as prosecutors in Germany and other countries have that do recognize the statute, to prosecute for the crimes of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime against peace of military aggression.
Well, we would actually have to start arresting presidents right now if that were to come to fruition. I mean, we'd start having. I don't have a problem with that. In regards to the first issue that you brought up, I'm not knowledgeable enough about it, but I do believe healthcare is a human right. I believe housing is a human right. I believe education is a human right. If you want a successful and healthy society, you have to provide those things. But in a capitalist society, that's not the way it works. Our education system is failing miserably. What are we right now? 46, California. We used to be in the top 5. We're failing our children miserably. The environment, I mean, it's a fallacy that this state is progressive. That's just blatantly false. We have lead in our water. We have lead in our soil. We have lead in our bodies in Southeast LA. We have people being exposed to hexavalent chromium-6. The companies that are doing it are owned by Warren Buffett, 3 of them. Not only do the companies, fund and donate to people like the speaker, the attorneys representing the companies against the community donate to the speaker. So the people of the Southeast LA are fucked sideways because of who they have representing them. And there's nobody within the local governments that are doing anything. In fact, a friend of mine who's running for Congress, Rodolfo Barragan, he did an interview with a teacher who's now, we helped her get elected to school board in the city of Paramount, and a gentleman who's actually part of the class action lawsuit against the companies, 7 companies that are poisoning the community. He's sick. He has 2 aunts on oxygen machines. I mean, you could go, just in the city of Paramount, every other block somebody has cancer. There's clusters of people in Maywood, 8, 9 people on a block that have died of cancer. And they know this, okay? So he did an interview and did it on, he's got his own little, does a newsletter, and they do like a YouTube video, and it's called Nuestro Tiempo. And he interviewed these people, and he received a cease and desist letter from the attorneys for the city threatening him. Now, he said that in the letter it says that he's causing mass hysteria, and what he said is false. And they're quoting the AQMD. Now, the AQMD, the governor, the assembly member, the speaker, and the Senate pro tem appoint people to this agency. William Burke has been the president of the AQMD, I think, for 8 terms now, for 16 years. That's an unprecedented amount, and it's the speaker that appoints him specifically. William Burke oversaw the Exide catastrophe, the refineries that are using HF that causes severe cancer. They're doing flares constantly. The people don't know what they're being exposed to. You have kids in school in Wilmington and Carson where these pipes will start shooting off, fumes in the air and smoke, and everyone's told to go inside, and yet nobody's told what they're being exposed to. This has been going on for fucking years, and the AQMD has never stopped them. The EPA, nobody in a position of power or the agencies to protect us are protecting anyone in our communities, and people are sick and dying, and they're denying health care, and they're doing nothing to stop it. Nothing. They're sociopaths. The people running the state are fucking sociopaths. That's the reality.